Very briefly, my name is Edgar Watring. I'm a learning strategist from Planet Technologies. I'm part of the Evolve 365 team. I have had the distinct privilege of helping many organizations roll out Copilot successfully, and I know how it can be overwhelming. Anytime or as a team or as an individual having to sort of take a new approach to the way that we get things done or sort of rethink our workflows, minding a new tool or a new application. Our goal today, though, is to simplify that process and explore some real examples that we can start using right away to elevate and streamline those tasks and those projects with Microsoft Copilot. I'd also like to note, sort of hanging with us today, minding our chat, are a great group of folks from Planet Technologies that are here to answer any sort of questions or provide further insights regarding any inquiries that you may have regarding Microsoft Copilot or how Planet may fit into that equation for you. So please, throughout our time today, don't hesitate, look for that chat and ask those questions as they come to mind. Would also appreciate here, we've got a brief, very short poll here that we've just entered in the chat, should pop up on screen. Would love to get everybody's feedback there. But as we're taking a look at that poll and sort of minding where we may find ourselves with Copilot chat, what are we here to talk about today? What's on our agenda? We are going to kick things off briefly by considering the state of AI in the workplace, and more importantly, why using approved AI services within the guidelines of our secure work environments is so critical. We'll note Copilot's place in our Microsoft 365 experiences and how our work in the GCC High Cloud remains safe as we work with Copilot in GCC High. Work our way through some demos as well as we put Copilot through the paces, minding some typical work scenarios and several types of Microsoft 365 files that we work with. Those that we find in applications like Word, Excel, Outlook, and beyond. And finally, we're going to explore what it takes to achieve success as we work with Copilot through effective prompting. Before we go anywhere, though, we need to talk about safety. AI, of course, is very much a buzzword right now, and the generative tools coming onto the market are incredibly popular. They allow us to do some pretty amazing things, like summarize lengthy documents, create new and professional content for our teams and for our customers. They can support us across almost any type of scenario based upon our existing workflows. They can provide assistance, insights, and help with rephrasing and recreating content. I do want to emphasize, though, how important it is that we use approved AI services because of how many of these generative AI tools function and they grow their knowledge. There's a real risk of unintentionally exposing personal or confidential data if we're not mindful of these things. The good news is that Copilot, when we're signed in with our work credentials, helps ensure data integrity. It applies the same enterprise-grade data protections that we're already using across our other Microsoft 365 experiences. What's the bottom line here? Many AI tools online do not protect our company's data. When we use Copilot, though, with our work account, enterprise data protections apply immediately. This means that our data stays within our organization's tenant and it's not used to train AI models. Now, of course, GCC High has some additional security requirements that are very specialized. This environment is intended for defense industrial base and organizations handling controlled unclassified information, or sometimes what we call CUI, or other defense-related data. GCC High, of course, has zero tolerance for data exfiltration. And Copilot in GCC High operates inside the same US sovereign cloud boundary that already protects our CUI, meaning that those prompts and the responses do not leave our tenant and they're not used to train public AI models. The trade-off for operating in a FedRAMP High ITAR is that the on a different authorization cadence than those that we may notice if we work at all in a commercial tenant. And as we sort of consider perhaps our first approach to Copilot, chances are that that first experience with Copilot is going to be with Copilot Chat. Copilot Chat goes beyond keyword-based search by reasoning over our question or request and responding in a conversational way. We can engage in an ongoing dialogue. Copilot can ask follow-up questions. We can request examples or adjustments. We can request a continual refining of that output to perhaps better understand information, explore fresh ideas, or create unique content that suits our needs. Copilot Chat acts like a personal work assistant for us to bounce ideas off and incorporate into our workflows to speed up everyday tasks. Today, we're going to focus on content creation with Copilot, but beyond content creation, we have powerful capabilities to summarize large amounts of information and request that Copilot provide us with suggestions and insights on existing content. So, quick question, would love to see some responses here in chat if we could. Which of these situations do you find a bit more challenging? Maybe you're approaching some sort of a task or a project and you need to create content from scratch, you've got nothing to sort of go on, or do you maybe find it more challenging to take existing content that may be in some sort of a rough format and then have to sort of rethink or reshape that content? Again, would love to get some feedback here in our chat regarding which of these scenarios we may find more challenging in our roles. While we're sort of considering that, I would just want to note that Copilot equips us to approach either of these scenarios with elevated capabilities. Perhaps we're in a situation where we're unsure where to even begin. We can prompt Copilot based upon the audience, the department, or the raw information that we have. And Copilot can help us get that first draft off the ground. Maybe we've got a rough draft already, but it's very rough. It could perhaps have incomplete information. The sections could be poorly arranged. Intended audience. As we inform Copilot regarding our goals with the document, it can provide recommendations regarding all of the above to rewrite that content to our best standards. So with that said, where can we find Copilot if we're interested in checking in or beginning to have our first experience with Copilot? Depending upon our tenants' policies, there may be multiple access points to Copilot. We can open our web browser and find Copilot as we sign into Microsoft 365. Copilot is also available as a desktop, a mobile app, and as we will see shortly when we jump into our demo environment, integrated with our Outlook online experience for easy access. There are other places potentially that we could encounter Copilot as well, but again, they depend upon our tenants' policies and our licensing situations. One thing we would want to note as we talk about Copilot Chat, that while Copilot operates inside our sovereign tenant, we should always follow our organization's internal guidance when handling CUI or sensitive mission data in our prompts. Now, getting started with chatting with Copilot is very basic. We'll want to look for that input box, and we could start with something like a simple question. In the same way if we approached a colleague, we can prompt Copilot to summarize this. Once Copilot summarizes that document, we can then respond to Copilot based on the summary. Potentially, would we want a reformat of that document with some sort of a different output? Maybe we'd like it in the form of talking points or a one-page summary. We could also ask that Copilot adjust the messaging and the tone of the document for a different audience. If it was potentially intended for our team or some other group within our organization. Perhaps there are specific details that we'd like summarized or that we'd want to explore in more detail. Copilot is then able to take our prompts and then adjust that content to suit whatever specific task or element of our workflow we may need. with that foundation in place, let's jump over to our demo environment. We're going to take a quick tour of the Copilot interface, some of the major features that we'll want to know as we perhaps are introduced to Copilot. And then let's start providing a prompt to see what Copilot can do for us to hopefully make our jobs a little more effective. I'm already signed in here to Microsoft 365. I'm here on the Microsoft 365 homepage. Visit the homepage. I do have some of those sort of classic Microsoft 365 homepage experiences that are still there. My apps are still waiting for me down here. I could still actually search across Microsoft 365, but of course, Copilot is now front and center of my M365 experience. What should we know? Some things that are super important, minding Copilot as we may be working with it in GCC High. Over to the right, I'd like to draw our little white shield with a green outline. This lets me know that those enterprise data protections are in place. Once again, any information that I exchange with Copilot stays within my tenant, and none of that information that I'm providing Copilot is being used to train the AI model. If we are new to Copilot and we're just kind of curious what we can do with it, what might be some ideas. Maybe we're just not even sure where to start. What's great as we're beginning to test drive Copilot is we've got some suggestions down here at the bottom. I would also note as well, minding those suggestions, we'll see down here in the lower right corner, this little see more link, and there's like a down arrow or caret. If I click that, I get access to other suggested prompts from Copilot. As I was new to Copilot, this is actually where I started. Again, if you're not sure entirely where to go, great place to start. Let's collapse that for now. And as we do, front and center, there's that prompt or that input box. This is where we'll go about initiating that conversation with Copilot. In the same way that you would approach a coworker or a customer or a colleague, and then initiate that conversation, make a request, seek out some sort of an inquiry. Maybe you're looking for some sort of suggestion. This is where that dialogue with Copilot is going to begin. We'll come back to this prompt box shortly. I would also note beyond the text prompts that we can provide Copilot, we can also include content if we need to refer to a document or draw inspiration from some other type of file. You'll notice this little plus symbol down here in the lower left corner of that prompt box. If I click that, it enables me then to upload content as a part of my prompt. I could add work content. If I've got files that already live in a place like OneDrive, I could include those in my prompt as well. What's great about Copilot too is if we maybe provided that prompt to Copilot and we think to ourselves, this could be a really helpful prompt that I could use in the future, or I could start the same conversation with Copilot again, but maybe take it in a different direction. We can actually manage what we call a prompt gallery. Now, if I provide that prompt to Copilot, I'm going to have a link to that prompt gallery. We'll see that shortly. We can also access that prompt gallery. If we return back down here to my See More link, if I scroll down here to the bottom, there's a link to that prompt gallery. Once again, a great place to start. If we're not exactly sure what Copilot can do for us or how it might be advantageous or beneficial for us in our roles, what's great about the prompt gallery is we get several of those different suggestion types. But Microsoft also provided us with a couple different ways that we can filter through all of those suggested prompts by, based upon this sort of drop-down menu here, a different job type, or just some very common professional work environment tasks to then find that prompt that we're seeking and then start that conversation with Copilot. We can actually also, as I noted a moment ago, save prompts that we feel may behoove us to return. As I click the Your Prompts here, you'll notice I actually just earlier today provided a prompt that I thought could be helpful to me in the future. I've saved that prompt, and as I include new prompts, I can return back to that prompt gallery to get access to my prompts, and again, provide that same question, make that same inquiry to Copilot, and then potentially take that discussion in a fresh direction. When we're ready to start or restart a conversation with a Copilot, maybe we've been interacting with Copilot, we need to just kind of reset things. We need to kind of change the subject. We'll want to navigate to the upper right-hand corner. We've got that little speech bubble with a plus symbol in it. That enables us to start that fresh chat with Copilot. We could do the same thing by returning to new chat over here on the left as well. And I think one of the most amazing features of Copilot Chat is also the ability for us to then return to our previous chats as well. I use this all the time in my role as a learning strategist. That menu is going to be waiting over here on the left. We've got a brief summary of some of the recent prompts and dialogue that I've had with Copilot across several different subjects. If I look down here for all chats, I can then revisit all of my chat history that I've had with Copilot. And as those chats pile up, as you might imagine, you could have dozens, hundreds of different conversations across all kinds of different topics with Copilot. This search is something I use a lot in my experience as well as a learning strategist, just because I'll remember a file, I'll remember a certain phrase or a keyword of sorts. If I can plug that into search, I can then quickly parse through all of those previous conversations and then find that past conversation and then continue that discussion with Copilot right where I left off. Let's provide a prompt to Copilot, though. Let's see what it can do for us. I'm going to copy and paste these from off screen, lest I put you through the arduous task of having to sit here and watch me type it. We're going to request that Copilot create a quick onboarding guide for new program analysts that provides some guidance regarding general responsibilities, maintaining document quality, and one more little bit here. We want Copilot to include 3 common mistakes to avoid in this role, in this situation. I could either hit the enter key on my keyboard or, like I just did a moment ago, click that blue circle with the white arrow in it to begin that conversation. Let's see what Copilot does for us. While I didn't specify the type of language, Copilot has a little bit of an understanding based upon the role and all the other details that we've included in our prompt here. And so we've got some very nice professional language here. A very simple document, but laid out in a very simple order. We've got some general responsibilities. And there, based upon our prompt, that last little bit that we included are those common mistakes to avoid based upon all of the other elements in our prompt scenario. As I scroll down, Copilot says, hey, I can provide some additional assistance for you if you're interested in it. We could then take this output from Copilot to then sort of continue that conversation. If we really want to sort of expedite things, we've also got some suggested prompts from Copilot down here. I could click any one of these to have it auto included then in that input box and then just hit enter or adjust that prompt then, depending upon the direction I'd like to take the conversation. If I like what I've got here in terms of the output from Copilot, I could come down here and then click this copy response to then take all that information. We'll see that that response that Copilot provided us has now been copied. I could then take that, paste that in an email, and a Teams message, and a Word document, any other place that we could include text content. And then now take that hard work that Copilot has provided us, repurpose it, and then move on with our task. So now that we've seen how to get started with Copilot, let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into that content creation. We have 3 easy steps to ensure that we have an optimal experience when we prompt with Copilot. We'll want to start that conversation. We've got to enter that prompt or instructions for what we want Copilot to create. It should always be as detailed as possible in our instructions and include any kind of source information that we want Copilot to use in that content creation process. Once we get that response from Copilot here with step 2, we'll then want to confirm those sources. As we're reviewing that output that Copilot provides us, we'll want to be mindful, did it use our source documents exclusively? Did it pull in new sources? It's always important that we validate the responses that Copilot provides us for accuracy and appropriateness. And lastly, we may need to continue that conversation. What sort of refinements do we need to make to that newly created content to perhaps make it better? We can instruct Copilot to refine that document based upon the intended audience or new source material we need to include or any other changing factors toward our goal. Copilot can help us get started when we're maybe facing a blank message or we're short on time. We can provide Copilot with bullet points or notes or even a rough idea, and then turn that then into a complete draft. Copilot helps improve clarity and tone as well, making sure that our messages sound professional and they're easy to understand. With Copilot, we stay in control. Copilot suggests a draft, and then we can review that draft, make edits, or personalize it before we take that content and then repurpose it before sending. This is especially helpful for routine emails or maybe quick updates that we need to provide our colleagues or our team. And as always, we'll repeat this a few other times during our session today as well. Don't forget that ultimately we remain responsible for ensuring that any generated content aligns with our program's classification and marking requirements prior to sending it or distributing it. Copilot can also be our writing coach. It can help us adjust how our message comes across. We can ask Copilot to help make our message more friendly, maybe make it more formal or more persuasive, depending upon our audience. It's useful when we're not sure how something might sound to our readers. Copilot can suggest wording changes to improve clarity, reduce ambiguity, or maybe even soften some strong language. It's always important, though, of course, that we review and then decide what we would like to keep. Don't forget, Copilot offers suggestions, not automatic changes. With that, what can Copilot do to help improve our communications? Back to our demo environment. Let's see what Copilot can do for us. We're going to want to start a new discussion with Copilot. So up here to the upper right to start a new chat. And again, I am going to grab a prompt from off screen, and we're going to actually include a bit of content as well that we're going to reference in our prompt that we're providing Copilot. So I'm going to say, Copilot, I need you to draft a short, very brief internal email here explaining the purpose of our AI acceptable use policy to our program staff and any sort of required next steps that might be appropriate. Now, we've noted here the AI acceptable use policy, and I'm not including that policy in my prompt here. So what I can then do is then include the content I already have regarding this policy in a document that I've got access to. I'm going to come down here to add work content. And let's see if we can't find that policy document. Where is it? There we go. Let me see, there we go. That's the one I'm looking for. So we're referencing this policy document. We want it in the form of an email intended for our program staff. Let's send that prompt and see what Copilot does for us. Marvelous. Copilot reviews the content in the document. It understands the context and the intended audience, and so provides its output. You know, with that same sort of greeting or salutation that you might provide an audience as you're then preparing to provide them some information in an email, it does the same thing for us. Because we included the intended audience, because we told Copilot we want it in the form of an email, it formats it like we would expect to see in an email. So with that said, I could come down here, copy that information, drop that into an email. As always, of course, we'll want to read through that output that Copilot provides us. Don't forget, Copilot is just our Copilot. We are still the pilots. We're still responsible for the information that we provide others, certainly in a secure or professional setting. So we'll always want to review that as well. Because we referenced that policy document, it includes the citation of course, the document that we included as a part of our prompt. And then while this information is great, let's see what else we might be able to do with Copilot. Let's just continue that conversation. I'm going to make one more request of Copilot, and we're going to say, hey, create an FAQ for us that might be suited for folks that are new to our team. I've got my email now that I've created from the previous step. I've taken all of that same messaging and that content. I've now repurposed it in the form of an FAQ. I've got two distinct documents I can use for two distinct purposes. But now I've not had to provide any sort of a lift to actually create that content. I've simply been able to provide the tone, the audience, the scenarios, and then reference our policy document. And Copilot has provided that information for me in these two very unique formats. As we noted earlier, though, we can work with Copilot more than just in the chat experience from our M365 homepage. For this next demonstration, I'm going to jump over to, I've already got it open in another tab, Microsoft Outlook Online. So I'm here in my mailbox online. I recently had a bit of email banter with my colleague Lawrence requiring a visit from our CIO to our headquarters. And, we'll forego reading through the entire email exchange here, but suffice to say there's a lot of other things going on in this scenario beyond simply the visit of the CIO. There's construction happening. We're going to want to get some sort of a lunch scheduled. A lot of moving parts happening here in this discussion. What can Copilot do for us to either continue that conversation or help us glean a very quick understanding of what's going on? If I look up in my ribbon, and I'm on the Home tab at the moment, and I look way over here to the right, there's Copilot. And you'll notice even as I mouse over Copilot here, Copilot's providing me with some recommended prompts based upon common email scenarios here in Outlook Online. But I'm going to go ahead and click that button just to open Copilot chat here in Outlook. And once again, we're going to paste a prompt from off screen. Copilot, I would like you to, based upon all of the information in this email dialogue, create a concise reply so that I can make a request to Lawrence to say, hey, I need to make sure that we've got this additional information as of the middle of next week. Let's send that prompt. All right, and based upon all of the other elements happening in that dialogue, Copilot has access to those. And so in the format of an email, I've got this reply to my colleague Lawrence. I've got some additional blanks to kind of fill in prior to everything else happening with the event that we're discussing. And from there, I could copy this response, reply to that email, and then send that response to Lawrence after I've reviewed it. I could also then take what's happening here now in this response from Copilot and then jump back to Copilot chat to actually take that output and then repurpose it into another format. Let's actually do that. I'm going to jump back over here to chat. Having had that engagement with Copilot in Outlook, what I can now do is return over here to my all chats. There's that Copilot chat that I just had with Copilot in Outlook. And then based upon that response, we've got now our email reply we're going to provide to Lawrence. But what I now want to do is take this information and then repurpose it into a Teams post that I can share with my team members regarding this visit from the CIO and all of the other things that are going to be going on with that event that day. I've got my reply to my colleague Lawrence now. I've got the information now that I can take based upon that dialogue with Lawrence and then copy and then paste that into a Teams message to keep the team informed. Everybody stays informed, and we're going to be poised and ready when it's time for that event to happen. Again, as we go through our time today, if there's anything that we've demonstrated, we need to explore in more detail, or we've got further questions regarding some of the things that we can do with Copilot, Chat is open and available. Please don't hesitate to reach out. So let's talk about what Copilot can do for us in the way of drafting documents. This is where Copilot really shines when we need to create structured content quickly, especially when we know what we need, but we don't want to start from a blank page. Copilot is helpful for common workplace documents. These would be things like project updates, overviews, FAQs, or briefs. All situations in which structure and clarity are really critical. We can ask Copilot to create a first draft with specific sections, like an overview, progress, risks, or next steps. This saves time by helping us to organize our thoughts, and then it ensures then that we're not going to miss anything important. If we already have that content, something like a policy or a guidance document, we can then ask Copilot to reframe that into plain language, such as an FAQ, making it easier for others to understand. Copilot can help with adding components as well to existing documents. For example, an introduction at the top of a document explaining the purpose, scope, or the intended audience of a document, which often can be the hardest part for us to write clearly. The thing for us to remember as we work with Copilot is that it provides us with that starting point, not a final answer. We always will still need to review, edit, and then tailor that content to make sure it's accurate and appropriate. This is especially useful when we're short on time, perhaps we're putting together something routine, or we need a clean professional draft that we can quickly refine. We also want to note, once again, Copilot can generate that structured first draft for documentation, such as an acquisition brief or internal report. However, that generated content should always be reviewed to ensure alignment with DFARS formatting or program-specific documentation standards. Copilot can also help us pull insights quickly, extracting just the key insights and then organize them into report-ready tables and summaries. It's well suited for summarizing longer reports, such as identifying key lessons learned, outcomes, or recommendations without having to reread the entire document. We can ask Copilot to extract key metrics or results and then organize them into a simple report-ready table. This can be helpful for things like briefings, status updates, or leadership summaries. Copilot can also help restructure information, like create a table of milestones with descriptions and target completion dates, making progress easier to communicate to our folks. These prompts work best when we're trying to take raw data and then information and then turn it into content that's going to be more digestible, such as a summary, snapshot, or supporting material for presentation. As always, we'll want to avoid including classified content directly in our prompts. Copilot is intended to support drafting of unclassified or appropriately handled CUI documentation within our tenant-approved workflows. All right, how can Copilot make that reporting situation a bit more approachable for us? Back to our demo environment. Let's see what Copilot can do for us. Once again, new conversation. And let's provide a fresh prompt. We've got a very basic Excel spreadsheet that's got some metrics, some reporting data in it. And what we would like to do then is have Copilot then pull those key metrics from that report and then just present them in a simple table that's going to be suitable for an internal team. Once again, down to our plus symbol. Let's include that work content. Again, I've already got that here in my OneDrive, and oh, wonderful. It's right here near the top of our list. We could search to find that content if we needed to, but I've got exactly what I'm looking for right here. I'll just hit enter on my keyboard. Let's start the conversation. Let's provide that prompt. Let's see what Copilot can do for us to pull those key metrics and build that table. I should point out as well, while Copilot's thinking, while we can provide significant amounts of content to Copilot within an acceptable bounds, depending upon the size of those files and the number of the files that we communicate and the complexity of the prompt that we provide, it may take Copilot more than just a moment or two for it to provide its response. So what I've provided to Copilot here is not a particularly large spreadsheet, but lots of details, including all kinds of metrics. So based upon that, Copilot's going to have to sort of think a little bit to then provide us the output. And while we would like Copilot in most situations to probably be as thorough, minding accuracy and minding the relevance of its output, if we find a situation where Copilot's taking a little longer than we would like it to, we could always look for this get a quick answer to kind of expedite that sort of consideration that Copilot's providing our content and the requests that we're making in the way of our prompt. And this isn't to say that we couldn't, for this conversation we're having with Copilot, choose that quick answer, and then maybe later return to Copilot and say, I'd really like to make sure that this response or the ways I'm going to repurpose this information are as accurate and as relevant as possible for my audience. At that point, we may want to let Copilot then take all the time it needs to finish that reasoning process. In the interest of our time, it must have known we were talking about it. All right, it's just finished. It let us know how long it took for it to kind of come to its conclusion or provide us that output. Excellent. All right. So we've got just sort of a brief summary of sorts here of some of the key information that's provided in that Excel spreadsheet here, a KPI snapshot, a nice little matrix. Next to it, we see these citation numbers as well. Copilot is letting us know where it's pulled that information from our sources that we've included as a part of the prompt. Some brief notes here included as well. Next month forecast. And then a nice little summary here at a glance. And from there, as we did with some of our other prompts, we could continue that conversation. Copilot lets us know some of the other things it can do for us, both in its suggestion beneath our prompt or with some of those other recommended prompts that enable us to just that much more quickly continue that iteration with Copilot. Let's take a look maybe at another reporting scenario or two. Let's once again start that new conversation with Copilot. We've got a project plan that we're going to include as a part of this prompt here. And so what we would like to do is draft an introduction based upon all of the content that's in this project plan, so that as folks see the project plan, they're going to get a quick idea of what the project plan is all about without having to read through that entire document. We will be referencing that project plan in our prompt. Let's add that word content. There's our project plan. Let's prompt and go. Lots of details in that project plan. What a nice introduction here. While this introduction is nice, I still feel like it's a little bit too long. So let's come down here and I was essentially going to type this in, but since Copilot provided us this suggestion, let's make this introduction even more concise. Let's just get to the point so that folks know what this document's all about without having to spend too long reading the introduction. All right, they say brevity is the soul of wit, and I think Copilot has helped us achieve our end here. I like this introduction a bit more than that other one. From here, once again, we could then copy that response, open our document, and then include that in our document, save that content, and now everyone's going to know what that document's all about without having to read through the entire document. One other scenario for now. Let's reference more than one file in our prompt here and see what it can do for us. In terms of reporting, we're going to get a look at a couple different spreadsheets. We're going to request that Copilot get a look at the key metrics across both of these spreadsheets, and then provide, if any, sort of outcomes from these reports, once again, in the format of a simple table. Let's add that work content. We're going to go example report 1, and then we've got an example report 2. Very good. Copilot's now going to look at both of those files based upon our prompt, then grab those key metrics, and then provide us then a single table across all of the information included in both. We're going to go ahead and let Copilot continue to think here. We've got a couple more things that we want to talk about today as it relates to content creation with Copilot. So Copilot, we're going to come back. You keep doing your thing there. Let's talk about what Copilot can do for us when it comes to creating presentations. It can help us create structured presentations with slides that include clear messaging and speaker notes. With Copilot, we can reference an existing document, or we can provide some sort of a structured slide outline, including a title, content slides, and a conclusion. Copilot's able to take that information and then build a presentation for us with all of those key elements. That's then going to provide us with sort of a clear starting point for our presentation. This can be helpful for us when we're short on time, or we need to quickly turn written material into something that we can present and share with an audience. Copilot can also recommend speaker notes too, which is helpful when we need to explain content to a general audience or perhaps an audience that's non-technical. Another capability of Copilot here as well is reviewing an existing presentation and then suggest improvements for clarity, accessibility, and audience engagement. We can think of Copilot as helping us to sort of provide that strong first draft of a presentation faster, so that we can focus our time based upon that output to sort of refine the slides, the notes, or anything else that we feel may be accessible to our audience. And as we've sort of reiterated throughout our time today, we'll want to note, generating briefing content should be reviewed and appropriately marked according to our organization's classification guidance prior to our distribution of that content. What other ways can Copilot help us in our presentation situations? It can turn ideas and information into visuals as well, which can make complex content easier to understand and share. Copilot can help conceptualize visuals such as infographics or diagrams, rather than just producing text. We can ask Copilot to create an infographic concept that summarizes key points from a presentation or report. It can also generate simple process diagrams to visually explain workflows or steps, which can be useful in situations like briefings, training, or decision discussions. Another option is asking Copilot to suggest a visual that supports the message of a report or a slide, helping us to really reinforce that key takeaway for our audience. Our goal with using Copilot here is faster ideation, helping us to move from content to clear visual explanations with less effort. Once again, to our demo environment, what can Copilot do for us when it's time to build that presentation or refine that content? Let's see what it can do. All right, there's our table with all of those key metrics across both of those spreadsheets from our previous situation, but we're going to go ahead and move on here. Once again, time for a new conversation with Copilot. We once again are going to be referencing a spreadsheet, but this time we're wanting to take the content in that spreadsheet, and we're not interested in something like a table. We want to take those details and then make it a part of a PowerPoint presentation. So we're going to generate a presentation based upon the spreadsheet that we're about to include. We'd like a title slide. We'd like content slides, and then a conclusion intended for our internal program leadership. We're referencing some financial data in our spreadsheet here as a part of our prompt. We want to take what is now in the form of an Excel spreadsheet and basically turn it into a PowerPoint intended for our audience to ensure that whatever sort of information is included in that spreadsheet is now accessible to an audience in the format of a presentation. Excellent. All right. So Copilot sort of ideated then over that spreadsheet that we provided based upon the scenario of our prompt. It's provided us with a PowerPoint presentation that we can download. There was a chart that was a part of that Excel spreadsheet. It's gone ahead and it's noted here that it's included that in the deck as well. And once again, Copilot offering to sort of provide us with additional content or assistance and some sort of typical directions one might imagine based upon the data in that spreadsheet and the prompt that we provided. We're going to make one more request of Copilot based upon our situation. Let's see if we can recommend some speaker notes so that we can then explain what's happening in all of this information that's a part of our presentation to an audience that may not be entirely familiar with typical finance scenarios. What's great about this as well is if you notice here, it provides us with its sort of response to us based upon our prompt, and then it offers to actually just include that right into that presentation that it provided us a moment ago. We can also then get a look at those speaker notes. Again, we'll always want to review all that content Copilot is providing us before we then repurpose it in some sort of an official format. All of those speaker notes. And then we could request it make those changes, download that power presentation. Now we've got that rough draft of sorts that we can go in, refine, and adjust before we're ready to deliver it to our audience. One more scenario we'd like to explore today. Let's say we've already got a presentation built. And we're going to take a little bit of a distinct approach here versus some of the other approaches we've taken. Let's reference the content first and then provide our scenario. So let's add that word content. I actually happen to have, I hope this is not confusing here because we're invoking the term Excel, but this is actually a presentation talking about the history of Microsoft Excel. So we're gonna reference this file, and then we're gonna request that Copilot review the presentation, all of the content that's in it, and then suggest improvements so that this information is clear, it's accessible, and then hopefully engaging to our audience. So let's make that request. So once again, rather than have it generate a PowerPoint presentation, we're now going to refer to a presentation that we've already got. What can we do to improve things just to make sure that our actual delivery of this presentation is as engaging as it could be to our audience? It's getting a look at the slides. It's getting a look at the messaging in the slides. It's getting a look at the speaker notes as well. Looks like there's some formatting changes potentially that we can make as well. This is always an important one. It looks like several slides either repeat the same information or the information that's on that slide could be particularly long or verbose, and maybe we'll want to sort of summarize or cut that back. Some recommendations regarding clarity and ways potentially that would help engage the audience more effectively as well. The request now to provide further assistance with that presentation. I've actually got one more request I'd like to make though. And what we're going to request Copilot do is based upon all that information that's included in that PowerPoint presentation, Provide a visual with a timeline and the highlights of Excel as an application as it's progressed over the years. Excel's over 40 years old at this point, so there's a lot of things that have changed over time. But let's see if it can't provide us with just a nice infographic that we could either include in a one-pager or make a part of our presentation to our audience. All right. Almost done with our graphic. Again, we can then take this graphic, include it in our presentation, or repurpose it in some other format. We can then put it into the hands of our audience as an additional informative resource. Before we go today, though, we did want to note, how do we achieve success with Copilot regardless of the situation, the types of requests that we may be making? When some folks first approach Copilot, they sort of just think about it like a search engine. They'll enter a few keywords and they're going to expect that perfect answer. This might be a natural way that we sort of approach Copilot because it's the way that we worked for years with some of these intelligent systems. Copilot, however, works best when we treat it more like a colleague. Instead of keywords, we'll want to think and then communicate in terms of full instructions. We should tell Copilot what we want, why we want it, and how those results should look and how we're going to use them. The most effective way for us to prompt is going to be as we provide specific details written in full sentences. And we'll want to note things like the tone or the audience of the format of our intended output. And this is not to say that less effective prompts are wrong per se, but sometimes they can be vague. A short request like summarize news about this company may still work, but that output could be broader or structured differently than what we had in mind. And we have some tips to provide prompt inspiration, whether we need help crafting that prompt or we're looking for a new angle or approach to a prompt that we've already tried. We can actually ask Copilot to guide us as we prompt step by step, like having it ask us 3 questions before drafting something. Copilot will then ask us to clarify pieces of our request so that we can craft a better draft, fill in those gaps in our prompt as needed. Another way to try Copilot is to have it prepare us for a new project or meeting with external people. We can give it a brief description of the company, links to their website and LinkedIn, and list any recent news posts referencing them. Do we need to organize our key contacts to have Copilot help us with that situation? All things that we can provide as a prompt in our way of interacting with Copilot. So with all of that said, once again, would love any feedback anybody would be willing to provide here. Are there any tasks that we approach regularly? And maybe we've got some sort of a blank slate, whether it's an email to a colleague, a presentation that we're building, some sort of documentation that we need to build. And maybe based upon all the things we've seen today, we think to ourselves, Copilot could be helpful for us here. I'd also be curious today as well, is there anything that surprised you regarding Copilot? Did it sort of spark any new ideas or maybe notions of how Copilot could be advantageous for you? Again, would love to hear any feedback you might have in the comments. And while we're sort of considering that as well, I just wanted to note in our sort of final minutes here that as an organization, Planet Technologies has helped so many people launch Copilot with confidence. So if there's something that your team or something that Planet can do for you, please, if you would, reach out to us. We'd love to see what options are available. I am actually going to drop some helpful information in the chat here. Let me grab this. Very basic email address, info@go-planet.com. And if you'd like to learn more about Evolve 365 and the types of Copilot learning that we can provide your organization, there's a link there as well. Oh, and it looks like we also have a brief poll here that we just included. Would love feedback. Really appreciate not only everybody's time today, but their engagement with our session. We do have a couple minutes. I'm actually going to hang around for a couple minutes here. So again, if anything does come to mind, please feel free to raise that hand or drop a question into chat. Happy to answer any questions or provide any insights I can regarding Copilot or Planet Technologies or Evolve 365. As time goes on, we're definitely going to see AI become more and more of a part of our workflows and our organizations. Of course, in the GCC high cloud, there are so many considerations regarding safety and governance and policy that we need to adhere to. It's refreshing to see some of these AI technologies, the capabilities that they provide, now operate safely within that GCC high tenant space. Definitely a game changer. We are working with several organizations in the GCC high space to actually make that approach to these AI technologies a little less overwhelming. Really appreciate the responses there to our session today. And very much appreciate everybody's time for joining us. There is so much buzz regarding AI out there right now. Sometimes it can be hard to distinguish what's hype and what's actionable, what's meaningful, and the ways that we would go about employing these technologies safely in our government scenarios. More important than ever, I think, to be aware of what's out there and understand that there are safe ways to ingratiate ourselves with these technologies and make them a part of our workflows as well. All right. Again, folks, really appreciate everybody's time today. I think with that, we're going to go ahead and end the event. If you do have any questions after our time today, we can be reached info@go-planet.com. And then we've also got our link to the Evolve 365 Learning Portal. Super appreciate y'all joining us today. I hope we learned something. It piqued our curiosity regarding what Copilot can do for us. My name, once again, is Edgar Watring. I'm a learning strategist with the Evolve team at Planet. I hope to see you in a future learning session. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.